Welcome back to the show. I'm Miss Kim and I am doing a super fun science experiment. It's called a rainbow cloud in a jar. And I'm going to show you a little bit later how you can do it at home too. Well, the reason why I'm doing this is because it's my spring break. And I have lots of time to read books, do science, do arts and crafts, and I'm gonna show you all of those things that I'm doing for my spring break and some things that you can do in your spring break too. So let's get started with that Hey Miss Kim show you will never forget. Come along.
It's time for crafts.
For this week's arts and crafts project, it's going to be used with basic materials that you might already have at home. I'm gonna be using some colorful tape, white paper, and my favorite arts and crafts material, which is oil pastels. These come out really pretty in color, but you're welcome to use color pencils, markers, or crayons. Let's get started. All right, so choose your first piece of tape, and you're gonna design this any way you want. Now you're gonna remove your tape from your coloring. Be sure to always write your name.
We love to read.
During my spring break and for the entire month of March, we are going to be talking about great women in history because it's Women's History Month. 100 years ago, women won the right to vote. They fought hard for decades to make their voices heard and their choices count. And they prevailed, which means that they won. For our reading today, we are going to talk about 3 powerful women who made their mark on history. So, get comfy, get a good space, and let's listen. During this Women's History Month, I'm going to be reading from a book called Bold and Brave, 10 Heroes Who Won Women the Right to Vote. It was written by Kirsten Gillibrand and art by Myra Kalman. When I was a little girl, after church on Sundays, I would visit my great-grandmother Mimi. She told me about a time when women like her left their homes and worked in factories, making equipment to help American soldiers win the war. Mimi taught me to be bold and to believe there was nothing I couldn't do. Mimi's oldest daughter was my grandmother Polly. She liked to roller skate down the long marble hallways of the New York State Capitol, where she worked. When I was about 10, Grandma took me to a big room where ladies stuffed envelopes with letters urging people to vote. I thought, I want to be just like them someday. Grandma taught me to fight for what I believed in. Grandma's oldest daughter was my mom, Penny. She always did what she set her mind to. She was a sports writer for her student newspaper, even though girls were not allowed in the press boxes. She went on to law school and was one of the only 3 women of her class. As a mom, she also earned her black belt in karate, something few women at the time aspired to. My mother taught me you need to be brave to forge a new path. Who taught my mom and her mom to be bold and brave so they could teach me and you? I can tell you who. The women who came before them. Women who faced unimaginable challenges. When my grandmother was born, women didn't have the right to vote. That meant they didn't have the power to elect the people who would establish our country's rules and laws. Less than a century later, I became a United States Senator, which means I helped make those laws. Here are 10 women who paved the way. They were called suffragists, not because they suffered, although they most certainly did, but because suffrage means the right to vote. They fought so women could be heard. Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Born in 1815, she passed away in 1902. Her stance was, dare to be different. In 1848, Elizabeth Cady Stanton was a young mother when she and her friends decided to hold a big meeting about women's rights. They believed something uncommon at the time, that all men and women are created equal, and wanted laws to guarantee it. They especially wanted the right to vote. The 300 women and men who attended this convention near Elizabeth's home in Seneca Falls, New York, became some of the earliest American suffragists. People made fun of the suffragists, but Elizabeth didn't let that stop her. She was fearless. As a young girl, she rode horses, learned Greek, and played chess, all of which were typically just for boys. She once said, "The best protection any woman can have is courage." The first convention in July 1848 was only the beginning of her 50-year effort to win voting rights for women. She was not alone in her journey. Susan B. Anthony, born in 1820, she passed away in 1906. Her stance was never give up. Susan B. Anthony was an abolitionist, which means she opposed slavery. Elizabeth Cady Stanton convinced Susan to fight for women's rights, voting rights too. Together, they were a team. Some people said that Elizabeth forged the thunderbolts and Susan fired them. Susan traveled the country by train and horse, drawn coach to rally support for voting rights for women, often wearing her favorite red silk shawl. She wrote home. We speak in school houses, barns, sawmills, log cabins with boards for seats, and lanterns hung around for lights. But people come 20 miles to hear us. Today, 20 miles may not seem far, but before cars, it could take all day or longer to travel that distance. In 1872, Susan tried to vote for president and was arrested. She spoke out for years and years until she died, almost 15 years before women won that right. Others carried the torch and the amendment that finally granted women the right to vote, the 19th Amendment, is also called the Susan B. Anthony Amendment. Sojourner Truth. She was born in 1797 and passed away in 1883. Her stance was, "Speak the truth." Sojourner Truth's given name was Isabella Bumfree. She was born into slavery in Ulster County, New York. She left her owner in 1826, the year before enslaved people were freed in her state. Years later, she changed her name. Sojourner means someone who travels from place to place. And truth was at the center of her faith. She once said, "I will shake every place I go to." And she did exactly that. Sojourner was one of the first African American women to successfully stand up for herself in court. Her young son was still enslaved, and she sued to free him and won. Sojourner fought to end slavery and traveled the country pressing for equality for all. She worked with some of the most important thinkers of the day, such as abolitionists Frederick Douglass and President Abraham Lincoln. In 1851, she spoke at the Women's Right Convention in Akron, Ohio, and in 1867 at the American Equal Rights Association meeting in New York. Sojourner asserted that all people deserved the right to vote, no matter the color of their skin or if they were male or female. Sojourner lived to bring justice to others, proclaiming that the truth is powerful and will prevail. Stay tuned for the rest of March to learn about great women who made their mark in our history. So, while I have all this time during my spring break, I am going to be doing a little science experiment. It's the exact same one that we saw at the beginning of the episode, and it's called Cloud in a Jar. Now, for this experiment, you're going to need shaving cream, a jar of water, and your choice of food coloring. And you can use as many colors as you'd like. So grab a towel or a nice clean surface and let's get started. You can put a generous amount, like that. Now take your food coloring and watch the rainbow magic happen.
And now a minute for our parents.
Hello parents, and welcome back to A Minute Just For You. Now, at the beginning of this episode, we did a fun arts and crafts activity. But for you on the other side, I'd like to call this thing something called an invitation to create. Now, this doesn't take a lot of materials, it doesn't take a lot of time to set up, but your kids will have fun doing it. So for this particular activity, all I used was tape, something to color with, and paper, and that's all you need. So find a space, dedicate some time to set up this activity for your child, and I promise you, you will not regret it. And it can also be something that you can join in with them too. So, thank you for joining me today, and that's A Minute with Parents. Thank you for joining me for Hey Miss Kim today. I hope to see you the rest of March as we talk about women's history, and stay tuned for a special green episode next week.